Hi everyone, welcome to Fort Washington, Maryland, where I am on location taking photos of this Airbnb. Come on in, this place is really cool. So this place is just a stone's toss away from the MGM Casino, from National Harbor, and from the outlet malls right here in Fort Washington. It's a great location. I thought it'd be a great time to do a little Lightroom edit. I haven't done one of those yet on this channel, so I thought maybe I would show you how I made this look like this. Let's get into it. All right, so here we are back in the studio. My name's Gene Sizemore. I'm a freelance photographer in Northern Virginia. I specialize in portraits, landscapes, automotive photography, and real estate. I thought we'd try something a little different this week. I posted a picture on Instagram over the weekend while I was shooting at that bed and breakfast. I got a lot of comments and a couple DMs from some people asking me how I got the look. And so I thought maybe I would go through the edit. I've got some exciting things coming up. I'm planning a video on splash photography. I'm going to be doing a light painted car interior. We're going to do a couple of hiking vlogs. And I've got a couple of really cool announcements coming up too. If you want to follow me on that journey, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those videos. Let's get into this now. Okay, so I took this image while I was shooting at that bed and breakfast over the weekend, and move my microphone a little bit. As you can see, it was a test shot and my light balance was way out of whack. So wanted to do an edit on this and see if I could save the photo. I did shoot this in RAW, so I have a lot of flexibility and things that I can do to bring this photo back to life. And I am going for kind of an artsy look. So the first thing that I'm gonna do, because I shot this in RAW, I do need to modify the white balance just a little bit. So the quickest way to at least get into the ballpark of the white balance is I'm going to take the eyedropper tool and I'm going to hover right over the center of this wine bottle label, because I know the wine bottle label is white, and the point where it is the most white, of course, is going to be right on the front, not the shaded parts on the side. So I'm going to click on this right in the middle, and that's going to give me a white point reference. And that's immediately going to take all of the orangey warmth out of the photo. Now, this is definitely closer to what you're looking at when you're standing there in the room. But when it comes to the final image that I want to create, because I want to be kind of artsy about this isn't really pleasing or attractive. So I do want to bring some of that warmth back. So the way that I do that, I'm going to take my temperature slider and I'm going to bring it back. And I think I'm going to hover around 3,500. That gives me a little bit more of the warmth back without it, looking like you're standing inside a giant orange ball or something. Okay, then if you look up here on the histogram, you can see that everything is a little bit underexposed. It's pushed off to the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back using my exposure slider. And I'm going to just drag this to the right and I'm watching the histogram, and I'm doing this until I'm just kind of generally more centered, okay? And that's just gonna brighten up the overall image and get me to a point where I've at least got a more even exposure across the image. I like my pictures to be kind of contrasty. Again, since I'm going for an artsy look here, I'm gonna go ahead and bump up the contrast a little bit. I'm just gonna kind of go up here to about 24. One kind of pro tip on Lightroom is you're going through and editing things. When you find things that work, it's sometimes hard to remember what you did. So I do look at the numbers a lot, because that helps me remember in certain situations what I did if I wanna go back and get that same effect on a different image, especially from the same shoot. Okay, so once I do that, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to make Jared Pollan cringe if he ever watches this video. I'm going to crop. So, because I want this to go on Instagram, I have two choices. I can either go with a 4x5 portrait, or I can go with a 1x1 square. For this particular image, I decided that I wanted to go with a 1x1 square. And so I just pulled this down and selected 1x1. That gave me my square. And so now I'm going to manipulate the sliders until I get what I'm looking for. Now, when you're doing this, one of the things that you want to ask yourself is, what is the subject of the photograph? So in this case, the subject of the photograph is going to be this plate of food, and the subject is complemented by the wine bottle and the sunflower. So those are the things that I want to emphasize in the photograph. So I'm going to bring these so that they're a little bit high. You can see I've got the rule of thirds here in the square box. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that these are sort of living, not really on the line, because I do want the countertop to disappear here a little bit. So if I bring that up there just a hair, and then I'm going to bring this down just to give me a nice little square. And I guess I want to go ahead and get this flower over here all the way in the image. I know I'm going to cut off this plate a little bit, and that's fine. What I want to do is, if you're going to do something like that, I want it to at least make sense. So what I like to do is I'm going to make sure that this plate comes around and connects with this corner. But before I do that, I need to straighten the image. So if you hover outside of the selected area here, what you can do is just simply press down and you get these grid lines, and I'm going to straighten it based on the wine bottle. Okay, so now it gives me a straighter composition. And so then I'm going to just make sure that plate, you can see right here, the plate comes down and hits that corner. So that's pretty much where I want to be. And from there, I can move this over just a little bit, because now I don't want the glass too far to the edge and the flower too far to the right. And I like this sort of division section here. This is sort of like for me, it's sort of like it's framing the subject. And so I don't want it to be too distracting by having that corner of the counter in there. So I'm trying to go right to the edge, and that's pretty much where I want it to stay. And so that's going to be my composition. You can see I've got this really hot spot right here in the center, because there was a light on behind the counter and it was too bright. And right now that's taking too much of your attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things. I'm going to first take your attention away from the light, and then I'm going to do things to bring your attention to what I want you to see in the photograph. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to drop these way down. I'm going to go down to about all the way down to 90. And again, because I shot in RAW, I have some flexibility here. So I'm bringing this down to 90. And what that does is it takes away some of the brightness, so it doesn't look like there was a sun behind there. And then I'm going to bring my shadows up just a little bit to about half of that, to 56. And you can see what that does. If I go back down here, bring it up, down, it's just kind of subtle, but it brings some of the detail back that you're missing, like along the wine bottle and inside the flowers and on the center of the sunflower and stuff like that. Okay, now, I'm not going to mess with the whites on this one because I'm already kind of bright back there in the background. But what I do want to do is I want to make sure that my blacks are black. And I'm going to show you on a Mac, I believe on a PC, this is Control. On a Mac, you want to hit Option, and then you press the black slider and you move it over just until you start to see some of that color come in, and then you let go. And that's how you know that you're all the way up against the blacks. Then the other thing that I'm going to do to achieve kind of a dreamy look is I'm going to adjust the clarity. Now the clarity is a pretty cool tool. I'm going to take this all the way to the extreme left to kind of show you in an extreme way what the clarity tool can do. Most people use clarity to obviously clarify an image, to make details more crisp. And but you can also use the slider in the opposite direction to get kind of a dreamy look. And so first, let me slide this all the way over to the right. You can see how it sort of makes everything look pastel-y, and it kind of makes everything kind of blend together. Definitely not the look that I'm looking for, but you can see that as opposed to bringing it all the way up to the right, that just looks too grungy and too grindy. And you know, if you were shooting maybe a skateboarder with a brick background, this would be a pretty cool effect, but that's not what we're going for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clarity and I'm just going to drop it down to about 40. So by bringing the clarity down, it gives me kind of a more dreamy look to the photo. At least that's just my preference. Now, if I zoom in, if I go to 2:1 here and I zoom in, you can see that there is a little bit of grain, especially right here on the label. This was shot at 1200 ISO, 1250 ISO. So to address that grain, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my luminance slider and I'm going to crank this up. I usually like to stay kind of around 31. Maybe we can go up to 40 on this. So that helps take some of the grain out. And then I am going to adjust the sharpness because luminance almost always takes a little bit of the sharpness out of a photograph. I'm going to show you another cool trick. Hit Option or Control on a PC. On a Mac, hit Option. Then you grab the masking tool and you bring that over, and you can see that your picture goes to black and white. And what it's doing right now is it's identifying the edges of your photograph. So this is the area where the sharpening effect is going to be applied. So by sliding this over to the right, you're limiting the sharpening effect to just those areas that need to be sharpened. So in this case, the edges. So by sliding this mask over, I'm identifying where the edges are, and that's going to prevent the sharpening effect from impacting any of the areas of the photograph that don't need to be sharp. So let go of all that. You won't really see much of a difference. I just bring this sharpening up a little bit. Again, it's very subtle. You won't really notice it unless you start pixel peeping, but that's what I like to do. Okay, so now after you get it to that point, you can kind of drop the exposure just a little bit if you think it's a little too dark. So I'm gonna kind of hover around there. And so remember earlier I talked about I wanted to downplay the brightness area in the back of the photograph. Now I want to highlight the subjects or the things that I want you to notice in the photograph. So the best way to do that is a technique called dodging and burning. Now, one of the things I love about Lightroom is it was designed from the very beginning for photographers. Now, I've seen all these new fancy editing tools, and they've got all these cool sliders and these new names for all this kind of stuff. And the reason I like Lightroom and I stick with Lightroom is because if you're a photographer and you understand the basic terminology, and if you've ever developed film in a dark room, a lot of the tools in Lightroom are going to be familiar to you. So if you're an older photographer and you're scared to get into Lightroom, don't be. You will be very familiar. It will be like you're sitting in a dark room. You're going to love it. It's pretty cool the way Adobe designed this product so that photographers would be in a familiar world. So in order to do that, I'm going to use this adjustment brush, and in Lightroom you use the adjustment brush to do a lot of things, but in this case we're going to use it to dodge and burn. And so I'm going to reset all these to 0. You just double click on any of these settings that aren't at 0 just to make sure you're starting over here. And so to do a little bit of dodging, which is to brighten the subject. That's the terminology that you should learn. Burning is to darken a portion of a photograph, and dodging is to brighten a portion of a photograph. So if you want a more in-depth explanation, let me know. I can do a video about that. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to dodge this photo a little bit. And to do that, I am going to take my exposure and bring it up to 0.90. And then I'm going to take my shadows and I'm going to take them up to 14, around 14. And then I'm going to take, because I'm going to be brightening things, I would like to add a little bit of saturation just because it'll bring some of the color back that you might lose if you brighten it too much. And it'll kind of add to the artsy look that I'm trying to achieve. Those are basically the settings that I want to use on this adjustment brush. Now I want to come down here and make sure that my flow is 75 because I don't want this to be too strong, but I do want to apply the effect about a third of the way. That just helps me make it a little more subtle. And so once you have all this set, you come over here. If you're on a touchpad, I'm taking my 2 fingers and I'm moving them up and down, and you can also use your bracket keys to make your brush smaller and larger. And what I like to do for a photograph like this, because I have some small elements down here that I'm going to be dodging, what I like to do is make the brush really, really small. Feathering, you want to make sure your feathering is set at 100 also. And that's going to be the outer line. If I bring this open, bring this up, you can see right here you've got an inner circle and an outer circle. Everything between the inner circle and the outer circle is going to be feathered. So you want the effect to be small enough that once you feather it, it's not going to overlap or go someplace where you don't want it to go. So now that we're ready, I'm going to show you what this effect is going to do. I'm going to start with the sunflower because you'll really see it here. I'm going to apply this brush right here very subtly, and you can see that I'm brightening portions of the sunflower. Now, as I'm doing this, I don't want to brighten the very edges and I don't want to brighten the inside, because I want to give the effect like you've got a good key light behind you and you're just kind of hitting the highlights of the flower. You don't want it to all be the same color, because then it wouldn't have any depth. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here with this dodging technique. So I'm just kind of dodging right here around the edges. I'm going to do the same thing here on this flower. I'm going to go a little bit out. You can see right here I went a little bit too far. If you hit your option key, it'll take that away, and then you come back in like so. If you hover over the little black dot, it'll show you where you have the effect applied. You see the red mask shows up, so that's where you have it applied. So I've done the flowers. I'm going to do a little bit of this pot here. Let me make the brush a little bigger. I'm just going to do the outside of that pot. I'm going to do the leaves. And again, I'm just kind of doing the middle of the leaves because I want the edges to kind of stay dark. That gives them some cool definition. Anywhere where there would normally be a highlight, you want to highlight. Okay, now comes the fun part. I'm going to run straight up the middle of this bottle, just like this. I'm not doing the edges, I'm just doing the center. It's going to brighten that label up. Same thing here on the top, there. Just one swipe up the top, and that gave me a nice little highlight right there on the top. I'm going to go ahead and highlight these grapes over here because I want to be able to see that detail. And I'm going to highlight just the top of this salami, which was really good. And I'm going to go around the rim of this cup of pistachios. And also kind of the center of this bread, both pieces. There. And then really fast, I might just kind of, I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, and then I'm just going to brush really quickly over the top of that rosemary. I think that's rosemary. Once that's done, I'm going to turn off my adjustment brush, and I am going to come down here and I'm going to finish this off with the one thing that I get hated on the most. There's some photographers that love it, and there's some that don't, but I'm going to put a vignette. I like to put a little bit of a vignette. If I go too extreme, that's what a vignette is, if you don't know. So I'm just going to go a little bit. I'm going to go like about -20, and then I want to feather this out to just make sure that it's nice and subtle. And that is the finished image. Okay, so that's how I edited this photograph for Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to drop a comment below, or let me know if there's something else you'd like me to do a video about. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to follow me on my journey, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. That's my video. Peace out.